All right. Thank you. Thanks, Vicky.
Thank you, Vicky. So I'm going to talk a little bit at some point. At some point, I'm gonna actually talk about how I got into landscape architecture, and then the what else is probably what you're thinking as this progresses along. So as I was saying, um, born on Christmas Day. Not a lot of people are born on Christmas, just so you know. A lot of people are induced when they're born, so the date that they're actually coming out is planned. I was supposed to be a New Year's baby. Apparently, for taxes, my dad wanted me to be born before New Year's, just to make it perfectly clear that I was a 1978 deduction. Um, like I said, I grew up in Huntington Beach area until about 5. Spent a lot of time outside, a lot of parks. Watched the show Chips. I was obsessed with Ponch and John and the freeways of Los Angeles and all the exciting things that the freeways had about them. There was just something magical about freeways, which later on in life, not so magical. Freeways, pretty uneventful. I'm hearing a chime. I don't know what that means. I hope it's a good thing. Is that I'm supposed to move on? Is that my Oscar music? Um, my favorite activities. I loved riding bikes. I loved riding skateboards. It's something that happened for an early life and stuck with me the whole time. So interestingly enough, the picture on the screen, that's not my dad. That's our next door neighbor growing up. And while I'm the I'm the bowl cut kid, that's my sister next to me. I don't know who the little girl is. I think it's the neighbor kid. I'm not sure, but that's the best I could do for pictures. So formative years. So watching the timeline at the bottom, we're moving out of the 70s, 80s, we're getting into the 90s. Moved from Huntington Beach to San Bernardino, which was actually not a bad place. In 1985, there was still a Air Force base that was active. It was a pretty active town. I became a resident of San Bernardino just in time for the decline of the city, so that was a fun experience. But my growing up, my elementary school times were a very tumultuous time, especially in local culture. So, 1992, that's when the Rodney King verdict became the LA riots. There's a lot of racial tension, and in San Bernardino, the thought process was the school district saw the value in putting the gifted and talented program in the otherwise worst performing schools to kind of balance things out. So coming from, just the stereotypical Orange County background, I was put on a bus, you know, uh, driven 45 minutes to school, which was the weirdest thing because there was one bus that drove all around town and picked up the kids from the different areas and took them to the gifted school. Um, but it was a school where the kids that were bussed in, everyone knew you were bussed in, and you were like the special kids, and uh, kind of had a bad stigma. In sixth grade, that's when the riots were happening. I was walking back from lunch and some kid decided to throw a rock at me and hit me in the head. And so like that was a very traumatic experience as a sixth grader. Um, Fun fact, the guy that threw the rock at my head, his son is the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders and has a very accurate arm. So his dad also, as a very accurate arm. And well, later on in life, we became friends. So the incident in sixth grade, although it made me want to reconsider a lot of things, including I changed schools to get away from the incident. Um, it all came around in the end. So we're gonna get to landscape architecture, I swear, at some point. Um, Also, so in 1994, January 17th, it was Martin Luther King's birthday, and we were off school. It was a Monday. And so that morning was the Northridge earthquake. And so being in San Bernardino was a good shake, but it wasn't very like eventful. Like, we didn't have stuff, no severe damage like closer to Los Angeles. But that day I went bike riding bikes with a neighbor. My mom had gone to work. She didn't have the day off, so I also didn't have to wear my helmet because she didn't see me leave the house with no helmet on. And I ended up crashing in a concrete channel going about 25 miles per hour, hitting head first, and knocked myself completely out to the where it was like resuscitation time. So that day while I did not have an earthquake related injury, I had a major head trauma that also carried through life because it definitely has changed the way that my life has gone as far as like my ability to speak and to think properly. There's a little bit of a hiccup there, and that really traces back to that day. So if you wonder why I'm a little off, I'm blaming it on that. So critical high school years. I mean, this is really where it comes down to. Um, Here's where landscape architecture comes into play. So I'm in high school. I wanted to have a car. In order to have a car, well, my mom said you have to pay for it, so you have to have a job. So I didn't want to work at McDonald's like my friends did because that was just stupid. So I said I want to do something fun, and I was sitting there. It was summer. I was watching a Snickers commercial, and this guy was eating a Snickers bar, but he was driving around in this like golf cart that picks up the balls off a driving range. And I was like, man, that is so obscure, but that looks like so much fun. That's what I want to do. So I called around because that's how you got things done back then. You had to call. I called around to different golf courses asking if they were hiring. And there was a public golf course in San Bernardino that said, yeah, we're hiring, but not for that. But we'll get you a job and maybe eventually that job will open up. So I said, you know what? I don't really have a lot of choice here. So at $4.25 an hour, I started my first job in high school. Uh, what it was fixing broken sprinkler heads and putting down sod on a golf course. And it was in the heat of summer, and it was awful. And I kept doing it because they kept telling me that there was a guy that was about to leave, and then I could have the job that I really wanted. So it turned out to be about 6 months later, I actually got to do that job. So I was driving around the picker cart, and I realized how quickly that job was not all that it was hyped up to be in the Snickers commercial. They didn't even give you Snickers to eat during the job. So it was really a bummer. So I asked what else was going on. I ended up talking to the general manager at the golf course. And when I went into his office, he had all these color markers out, and he was like drawing on a plan. I was like, what are you doing? This is kind of cool, but and it smells really good because it used to be these ad markers, and it doesn't smell good, but it makes you forget your problems really quick. Um, Fun experience. I said, this guy, whatever he's doing, that's what I want to do now. And so he's like, you know what? I want to be a landscape architect. He's like, I'm a grown person, but someday I want to be a landscape architect. I've been trying to take this test, but I can't pass a certain section. So I said, well, look, this is cool. You're onto something. I'm interested. I want to work where I can see what you're doing. So he kind of like helped me um, into a position where I was helping him like color in his things, and he was making his own posters for like there's a sandwich special in the pro shop, and so we'd make these colorful posters and drawing like different plants, and he was teaching me how to do that, and he really liked that someone was interested in landscapes, so he was teaching me what the different trees were on the golf course, and it turned into this really awesome experience. Um, so that's 1995, 16 years old, got my driver's license, got a first taste of landscape architecture, continued working at the golf course. Meanwhile, I'm starting to take my PSATs and those kinds of things. I took this test called an ASVAB, which meant nothing to me. It was just a cool opportunity to get out of class. And I ended up scoring one of the highest scores in the nation. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it was a big deal. And then I started getting these weird military guys showing up at school and wanting to talk to me. And it was like, okay, that's cool. And they're like, you really should consider coming to the Marines. You should really consider coming to the Air Force. So it was the same spiel, but slightly different branch of the military. Never got the Coast Guard for some reason. I don't know what's up with that. But I didn't realize what it was at the time. My dad had been drafted to Vietnam. His military experience was not ideal. And so he's like, no, it's dumb. You don't want anything to do with it. They were offering me cool stuff like a full ride to West Point and basically a choose your own adventure. I could do anything I wanted in the military. I said, doesn't sound so good. So little did I know that was a valid career path that I kind of just turned down because really I still was like, it was still lingering in my head that I wanted to work for the CHP and to ride with Punch and John on the motorcycles and do all the fun adventures. So that was like my top career choice. But then there was this thing that the golf course guy was doing where it was like, oh man, like I could go to school and then like color stuff and have a nice fun life of coloring stuff all day long. So that's the kind of a crossroads I hit in life. Ended up going to Cal Poly Pomona. Our family qualified for what was called a Cal grant, and so I had good enough grades, and we were poor enough that they offered a full ride to Cal Poly. So everything is included except for housing. So I had to commute. So that was not a big deal because I was still working at the golf course. After a while at the golf course, I'm in college. The general manager's like, look at man, you need to stop working at the golf course. Like you're wasting away because you have all this potential and you're just sitting here uh, doing like menial tasks. So he's like, I know a guy, he's a landscape architect. He's here in town. So I went to go work for the only landscape architecture firm in San Bernardino. Very small firm. It was me, the owner, and his like administrative assistant. And so I what I ended up doing is I learned how to do AutoCAD in Cal Poly. Uh, they started getting clients demanding that they use AutoCAD, which wasn't like a huge ask, especially now. So he said, "Well, can you redraw this plan for me in CAD?" And so that's kind of how I got my start. Learned how to do a lot of things on my own, just kind of watching and learning from that. And then I'm almost done with college. 9/11 happened. So I'm in my final classes at Cal Poly Pomona. September, fall quarter starting. We just had this attack on America. Who knows? We thought we were going into World War at the time. We thought this is it. So what do I really want to do? Do I really want to stick with school? I came dangerously close to just dropping out of school, saying, you know what, this isn't how I want to spend the last year of my life in college, taking dumb tests. So I was dead set on dropping out of school at that point. Um, Stuck with it. Glad I did. Um, Came to the end. Went to the firm day event at Cal Poly. Interviewed with a few firms. Had a couple choices in mind, but there was a choice that allowed me to still be close to all my no good friends in San Bernardino, and that was a place in Riverside called Community Works Design Group. So in 2002, I started at Community Works Design Group. It was June of 2002. I had to work for 3 months under probation. So July, August, September. So we're now in September of 2002. I had my 3 month review. They said, you're officially hired. Welcome to the team. Hey, by the way, we're going out to watch Monday Night Football tonight. You want to go with us? I said, sure, that'd be fun. Uh, didn't make it home that night. Woke up the next day in jail. So, long story short, um, made a series of really bad decisions in a short amount of time. There was definitely alcohol involved, but there was also me running away from the police on foot and resisting arrest and a bunch of fun stuff that came back. And my work probation turned into actual probation. So I was on probation for 3 years. This is a time when my close friends and family, my my bad influences were like, well, yeah, we knew that this is going to happen eventually. Like that's what you're destined to be. Is like, you're one of us. You're one of the people that this is just what happens in life. And so I got to thinking. I said, you know what? Do I really want to do this, or do I want to try to make something out of my life? And so, with luckily being in legal trouble, got me to thinking that maybe I should stick with this. So in September of 2002, by the time I got through the court system, it was about March of 2003. I was only in jail for a day, so it wasn't like a long time. I didn't no tattoos, no prison tattoos or anything. Um, I made a concerted effort to be good. I said, this is something that I have potential. People are telling me that, like, especially like people like the judge that say, what are you doing here? What's this all about? Like, this doesn't make sense. Um, that was an intentional point in my life where I said, I need to just focus. And so um, I spent a lot of time working. I worked as much as I possibly could. I got my lead accreditation in 2003, which was like a brand new thing at the time. I was licensed by 2005. When I went to apply for licensure, you have to list if you've gotten any traffic tickets or anything. And so I was like, oh, well, I have a misdemeanor on my record. Is that going to get in the way of licensure? And they're like, we're going to have to get back to you on that. And so it was actually for a while, I was in the gray area. They decided to let me go ahead and take the tests. So this is between the state board and also CLARB. So between the two of them, I had to report to everyone. Like this is like scarlet letter, like just really sucks. But it's something that eventually you go long enough, and it's something that kind of falls away. So like not only was I able to start getting car insurance again, because that's one of the things that goes away right away. Um, I was able to get my life back on track and to really focus on work. I went from being project manager to senior project manager, started taking projects where I was the prime consultant with sub consultants underneath me, a lot of park projects, stuff like that. One of the things is I always wanted to design a skate park, and that's something I got to do. And then from one skate park, I got to design five, and it was at a time where there was a really big demand for skate parks. And so I was like, man, this is really cool. I'm glad that I stuck with this. And then the economy tanked. We had the housing crisis where all the people with the bad loans and everything just fell apart. So I was like, oh no, this isn't so good. But for the first time in 5 years, I had free time. And in my free time, I met my wife, I got married, we got pregnant in an 18-month stretch. So I went from being completely focused on work to now having a family. And wow, this is my own thing. And so um, I was offered a job at a company called California Skate Parks. And this is a company that at the time was doing projects all over the world. They did a lot of stuff that was with celebrities and televised, and it was like a really cool thing. And I thought this was my dream job. This is something I wanted so much, and was a blast. And so I got to work on a lot of fun projects. One of the most notable things I did was um, the 1964 World Fair was held in Flushing Meadows Park in Queens, New York. And so there was really cool stuff like the It's a Small World ride was actually in that park during the time. The New York had built all these really cool things for the World's Fair, but between 1960s and the 2010s, everything was just dilapidated. Um, these guys that own the Palms Casino, the Maloof brothers, got into skateboarding, and they wanted to have these really notable skateboarding contests. So they started at the Orange County Fairgrounds, but decided that wasn't big enough. So they wanted to host an event in New York where they did a permanent skate park. So they honed in on Flushing Meadows Park because of the tennis tournaments. It just had the right transportation and parking and everything to support a big contest close to New York. And the problem was it's an old like swampland basically, and skate parks you have to have them on a firm surface. And so the project almost came to a grinding halt. And I said, well, what if we built it in the remnants of the old Astral fountain? It's like this, it was a really cool fountain for the World's Fair. And it had these piles. We got the as-built. It had concrete piles going down 60 feet into bedrock. And so I was like, okay, this thing is stable. What if we use the shell of the fountain to create a skate plaza that paid homage to different skate spots all over New York? So we got with these New York skateboard legends, and came up with this idea in a very short amount of time. So from concept to completed project was like March to June of 2010. And so in June of 2010, we're all geared up. The skate park is built, ready to go. Um, my wife went into labor, and I didn't get to go to the contest. And I was so bummed because I was like, no, this is such bad timing. Um, but New York had been on my mind, and we were looking for names. And I said, Brooklyn. What about Brooklyn? And so our first daughter's name, uh, Brooklyn, turned into, we'll get back to that as I continue not talking about landscape architecture here. But at California Skate Parks, I was involved in projects all over the world. And the problem with all over the world means different time zones and traveling and different things that you don't want to do when you're brand new in a marriage and you're trying to get to know how to live with another person. And then you bring a baby into the mix, and now you've got someone, you've got an extra life that is like this whole new phenomenon. So I did a ton of stuff in a very short amount of time at California skate parks before I realized that I was at a crossroads where I had to realize uh, I had to decide between what was my dream job or continuing on with marriage and family. And so I made the right choice and I chose marriage and family. And I look back on it today and I could have made that choice even sooner. There are things that happened during my time at California skate parks. We were working with a lot of um, very rich influential people, a lot of celebrities. We were doing things in some instances that may not have been completely legal, and I always kind of suspected things were like maybe this isn't so right, but never really thought too much about it because it was just so cool. Like, oh yeah, this is we're doing this really cool thing. So I just stuck with it. But I had gotten an offer to return back to Community Works Design Group in 2011. It reflected a significant reduction in the salary I was making from California skate parks, but it allowed me to be closer to home. I took that offer, ended up having to short sell our house because it just was we just had a lot of expense. We had a single income. I was like feeling like, oh man, I finally understood what my mom was going through when we were a kid, just trying to make ends meet. um, but I started working back at Community Works. Like the second week I was there, the receptionist said, hey, there's someone from the district attorney's office on the line for you. And so I was like, okay, I think I know what this is about. And so the lady was the deputy DA, and she's like, I need to talk to you. And we're outside of your office right now. So if you can just come out front, we don't have to make a big deal out of this. And so I was like, okay. I said, I kind of felt like this was coming. We ended up having a very productive conversation, and I ended up agreeing to testify against a lot of very influential business people and celebrities in exchange for immunity. So once again, it was another. I could have ended up in jail. I could have gone down that road once again for a different reason, and didn't, and decided once again that things I really need to get back into focusing on, like becoming something worthwhile is basically what I called it. Our family continued to grow. So from our baby Brooklyn in 2010, we actually lost our second baby. So kind of bummer, harder to describe. But luckily we had our rainbow baby in 2012. So we had a boy. So now we have a young girl, young boy. Uh, boy, what are we going to name him? Ended up naming him Lincoln. And so unintentionally realizing it was also a New York name. When 2014 came around, we had another girl. So now we're stuck with New York names. We named her Chelsea. Um, my wife said, my wife had one sibling. I had one sibling growing up. She said, I always wanted to have like a third sibling. It was just me and my brother. Same thing. I had a sister. So okay, what we had girl, boy, girl. And then once Chelsea we entered the picture, then my wife was like, how cool it would be if we had a pair of girls and a pair of boys. So it's like, well, we have no control over that, but I'm in. I'm liking these kids. They're pretty cool. And so we ended up having a boy. And so we had girl, boy, girl, boy. Now it's Brooklyn, Lincoln, Chelsea, and Hudson, like Hudson River. So New York names continued. We said, we're good. Got the 4 kids. We did it. We girl, boy, girl, boy. We're awesome. We're set. Meanwhile, I am frantically looking for more income streams and opportunities to pay for all of this mess I've gotten myself into. And so I saw that pursuing accessibility credentials, California has a certified access specialist program, um, was something that I saw as the opportunity to expand just in case the economy tanked and there were not landscape architecture jobs available, that at least I'd have a backup plan. Over time, I've kind of taken a strong focus on accessibility. So it's become something that I'm doing on a daily basis in addition to landscape architecture. So with the economy increasing, I was kind of getting frustrated with being at Community Works. By this time, I had started initially in 2002, Now we're talking 2015, so about 13 years later. And I started looking around. I said, you know what? I think I'm ready to move again. I think I'm ready to 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 try again at a different firm. Well, uh, the owner of the firm said, "Well, I want to retire. So would you consider buying the firm for me?" And so I said, "Well, I don't have any money." So that was the first hurdle. We worked on some ideas with some business planning people, and we got into a situation where I had a viable way of purchasing the company. So I decided, let's go ahead, let's do that. So in 2017, I had scrounged up pretty much everything that's like your nest egg for like retirement and decided to invest in myself. I got 20% ownership of the company in 2017. By 2021, I was 90% owner of the company, but the last 10% had a lot more obligations to it. So um, by this point, we decided we had 4 kids. We were doing great. I went in for a vasectomy operation. The drive to the hospital for the vasectomy, my wife said, I'm not feeling so good. And I said, no, 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 this is my day. I'm the one that's not feeling so good. And but on the way back from my procedure, we stopped and got some pregnancy tests, and it turns out she was pregnant. So we had a bonus baby. So in 2019, running low on New York names, we ended up with Kennedy. So girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, with Brooklyn, Lincoln, Chelsea, Hudson, Kennedy. So our New York family. We have eventually got a dog named Rockefeller. So and we have another dog on that was just born, and we're going to pick it up in April. So that's another New York name we have to come up with. Um, but so the tail end of the business transaction, I've already invested a crazy amount of money into the business. The owner of the business kind of had some remorse, like maybe I'm not ready to retire yet. Maybe I don't quite want to sell. And maybe he made things very difficult on my day-to-day life. He was running his own landscape architecture firm out of our office while I was paying for the business lease, all of the equipment. He was using my staff to draft his projects. I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I either have to walk away from this situation or I have to find a way to finish the transaction immediately. So in talking to my financial advisor, we found a way to do it. I paid off the company. And so now, first thing we had to do, we had to move out of the building because it was the guy I bought the business from owned the building we were in. I had to break a lease with him because before I had majority ownership, he had entered me into a 30-year business lease for the property. So, not the best situation. He decided to jack up the rent. We got out of there. We're in our own office now. Great landlord, awesome place. In the last, so this was like 2023, October 2023, was little about a year and a half ago. Since I have full ownership of the company, I was able to elevate people internally. So I've got 2 associate principals that help me out. We're currently at 11 staff total. Last year we had our record number of incoming contracts, and that dates back to the company's inception in 1985. And then also the largest backlog, even if you inflation adjusted, going all the way back to the beginning of the company. So coming into 2025, company's looking super solid. And you guys are on this call, you get sneak preview information. We're in a potential merger acquisition deal, which will double us in size. I can't tell you what company that involves, but chances are you're going to find out pretty soon. So switching gears, what I was supposed to talk about today is, as the SoCal chapter president of ASLA, what are my goals and what kinds of things am I looking out for? Well, my main goal as chapter president is very simple. It's really just bringing people together. We went through COVID. There was a lot of separation where people just didn't mingle. They didn't the relationships between companies that mentored people and students being mentored, those kind of fell off to the wayside. So it really, if I can do anything during my term, is getting people back together, and it's reconnecting students, emerging professionals with the living legends counterparts, and just the professionals in general. And the best way to do that is through our national organization, ASLA. It's something that has all of the right ingredients in place, and it just is the best way to get everyone connected. And so that's I just want to keep pointing fingers and redirecting back to that. So it's some temporary setbacks this year, as you know, the fires, and also what I call political climate change, because there's an awful lot going on a day-to-day basis that may shape the forward direction of a lot of us as landscape architects. And so we don't know what the next 6 months to a year have in store for us, but we're all encountering this together, and that's the important thing is having the ability to work through this as a collective organization and not as individuals. And then I'm super excited about the emerging leadership within our chapter. And so in our chapter's executive committee, Melanie Bufa is my president elect. She is awesome. Jared is awesome, and Elisa, who's on the call, is awesome, and she's taken the role of our climate action committee chair. And so there is a lot of good ingredients in place, and we've got a very positive outlook despite the hurdles that we've encountered the beginning of this year. Personally, I want to continue being involved in ASLA. I want to learn as much as I can within the field of landscape architecture, but also accessibility planning and how those things go hand in hand. I talked about the business merger. That's definitely something that's my next crossroads in life. But also balancing life. I have 5 beautiful children. Some of them are more beautiful than others, especially with their personalities. Basically, I've been told that a lot of them look like me, so I'm sorry about that. I look forward to spending more time with them, and that means having to make decisions to delegate more, and that's an important thing to learn, is letting other people in the office take some of the responsibilities so I have more time to spend with my wife and kids. I want to downplay the importance of college to my 5 kids so that I don't have to pay as much. Also, I want to glorify minimalist wedding ceremonies for my daughters, because like, who needs all the hoopla when you could have just a nice, simple, affordable wedding. I want to mentor the people that will eventually buy the company from me when it's time for me to retire. And on that retirement date, if it's 2045, I'll be 67 at the time. So I really want to shave some years off that date, but that's going to require all the stuff that leads up to it. And so that's kind of where we're at with that. And so questions, I did notice that with my PowerPoint, I couldn't see the chat during all of that. So I think there were some comments in the chat, and I'm looking at it for the first time here. So scrolling back.
It was a lot of just amazing praise and support for a lot of the hilarious things you were sharing with us, Scott. That was incredible.
Oh, I was going to ask if I was muted at any point, but I guess I slipped through.
Could you imagine we're all just watching you know?
You're like, someone's got to tell him. Someone's got to tell him that his microphone's not working. Landscape Architecture Crime Podcast. Clayton, that's a pretty cool idea. I like that. Downplaying importance of college. Let me tell you, trade school is not a bad thing.
No.
I'll tell you, landscape architects too. No, there's a lot of, I think, as landscape architects, having the degree, BSLA, supercharging the road to licensure is a huge thing. If any of my children are interested in landscape architecture, which they don't yet seem to be, if we do cross that road, then I will definitely encourage them to find an affordable program to enter.
Well, I'll just start off and say thank you, Scott, for sharing that. I learned so much. I feel like I know you, but like, I learned so much. That was absolutely incredible. And to just see the kind of what you were, the trajectory of how you look back at your career and how you got here is so honest. And I think just refreshing
that's
to
that's
see
important.
those turns. Yeah.
Like, why I don't think I've never learned from hearing all, like, everything just fell into place for people and it was all happy and fun and joy, because that's not really how life goes down. And so if I have some transparency on some of the things that happened in my life that have caused me to be nudged into the right direction, I want to share that because I would hate for other people to go through the same things in a lot of ways. So that's kind of the reasoning behind that. But
That's
also, yeah,
awesome.
you can't get to know someone if they're only putting their best foot forward. Like you really, that's not telling the full story.
Would
So
love to
that's
open it up if anyone has any questions
yeah,
for
Yeah,
Scott
Scott,
or
I got a question. But
Kevin,
first
go
off,
ahead.
you got another Christmas baby in the chat.
Nice.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
So actually, his first question is it like a fortunate thing or an unfortunate thing? That's what everybody asks.
Oh
But
no, no, no. So you get twice the presents. No, you
no,
get
you just
canceled out
get
presents.
one big one, right? And
Exactly.
yeah, exactly.
You hear fun words like birthmas, and by fun I mean not fun. I mean awful, awful words.
Yeah. Um, my other question is like you started off at a golf course. Have you had a chance to design one yourself, or is that like in the works or in
Oh,
your
so
dreams?
and so I have done some renovation work to golf courses. I've not designed a brand new course, and I don't ever foresee that happening. It's a very specialized field. I have done where we've gone back and done like turf grass removal efforts to help water conservation within golf courses, or like if there was damage to a green that had to be rebuilt, stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're also currently working on a miniature golf course, which is pretty cool. And probably from an actual golfer's perspective, isn't like golf in any way, other than it has the similar like holes and stuff and clubs. But um, the thing I learned about golf working at a public golf course is that people that play at public golf courses are awful people. They're awful human beings. And so it's something that turned me off to golf because there's like there's sanctity in the sport of golf, and there are people that are very serious, and they take it it becomes this crazy game of like uh attrition and accuracy and just so many things going on. And then there's like public golf courses. So my world of golf was limited to probably everything that golf shouldn't be, and that's like how many beers can you possibly drink in 18 holes, and what, you know, like those types of things, or how much air can I get off this golf cart, off of this tee box. um those are the lessons that I learned through public golf. But I hope that was
Yeah.
answers your question.
Yeah, no. I've definitely crashed the golf cart in the gutter once or twice. But yeah, public golf courses are a mess, but yeah, awesome.
Yeah. No, and I'm sure there are good people on public golf courses too. I know there are good people on public golf courses, just not the one I worked at.
any other questions for Scott?
I have a question, Scott.
Sure.
Have you ever talked to high school kids or middle school kids about the profession? Because I have done that in the past, and sometimes like they are going through a lot, and then you're talking to them and they're just like, you don't know me. You know, I just think it would be really appealing to hear this.
Yeah, I've done a few career day type things. It's a lot of fun. I hope that I don't cause damage. Is my biggest concern when I'm talking to high school kids is I hope I don't glorify the wrong things. And so that's always a challenge to tell my story and say, but don't do that. Don't do that part. Don't do that part. But no, there's profession wise, we are still a very misunderstood profession. People think that from the name landscape architecture, they understand what it is, and they don't. It's going to take an ongoing effort. The more publicity we can get as a profession, and by publicity, it's publicity for our good works. You know, like the accomplishments, the things that landscape architects are doing to make the world a better place. The more it's going to be an appealing profession to kids. And so I think that's something that we all are kind of tasked with, is just really spreading the word about what we do in a positive light.
Yeah, I think the skate park design aspect would be really interesting too.
It's creating kinetic sculptures, and there's so much about skate parks that people get wrong. especially in design, and it's definitely a trial and error kind of thing. You can have the most respected professional skateboarders that have no business designing a skate park, and then you have people that kind of stumble upon the coolest skate features you'll ever see. So it's really it's a really fun little niche to have, and I'm glad that I made it through my I think I got it mostly out of my system. We still do an occasional skate park project, but there was a time that that's all I did. It's all I did, and it was my complete focus, and I saw the world as a skate park.
We almost need like a new commercial or like branded series that's like a landscape architect designed this. Just to show, because everyone always thinks of just a park or, something very, a garden in a yard. Like, but to see just the ways you've touched the profession through different typologies of work is awesome. Like we we come up against communities that want skate parks all the time, and I have no expertise in that. I have no idea how to design a skate park. So we look for consultants and they're few and far between. Like it's so cool.
Yeah, and there's some really good. There are probably about 10 companies across the country that they solely focus on skate park design, and they you really should line up whenever you can. Line up with the skate park specialist, and not just someone that has been to a skate park before and thinks it's a cool thing. So lots of resources out there.
Cool. Any other questions for Scott? I want to be respectful of everyone's time. We have about 2 minutes left. Otherwise, I'll just put in one last big thank you, Scott, for joining and sharing your story. I think that was incredible. I think this is always such a great opportunity because, because our chapter is so big, we don't get a lot of face-to-face time with, our president every year. So thank you for taking the time to come chat with us, share your story. It was incredible to hear and see, and really, really appreciate all your time.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I hope this is just an introduction, and that I I have not been kicked out of office yet, so I still have several months left in my term. There's a chance that we'll cross paths again, each one of you. So I'm hoping that
We
you
better.
take part in chapter activities so that we can continue the conversation.
Yeah, and everyone keep a lookout. We'll have a volunteer event hopefully sometime end of April with the LA Regional Food Bank. And then we'll continue putting together some programs. If you didn't put any programs or ideas that you have in the chat, feel free to email me anytime. I'll throw my email in the chat before we end the meeting. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Really appreciate it.
Nice seeing you. Have a great afternoon.
Hope to see you all soon.
You too.